Hello everyone, my name is Martin, and in this quick tutorial I will show you how to configure Atavism admin account and how to use Atavism admin panel. So right after Atavism installation we don't have any accounts. So if we will open Atavism editor and navigate to the server and accounts, as you can see we don't have any accounts here. So we need to create our first account. Let's switch back to the Unity editor. Let's enter the runtime and let's register new account. So let's say Atavism 01. And as you can see, our account has been created and we can log in now. So let's close it, let's enter our credentials and let's log in. Now we'll need to create our first character, so let's enter character name and let's create it. Right after we will create our character, we should be able to see our accounts in our Atavism editor. So if we will write here our Atavism, as you can see we have our Atavism 01 account and status is normal. So we can switch this status to admin. We can right click on the on this entry, or we can click these three dots additional menu and click edit. And here we have to select admin. Click save. And we need to go back again to the Atavism editor. And now we are in the Atavism world. As you can see we have this Atavism panel admin icon, and if we'll click it, admin panel will show up. So here in this panel we can enable our GM status, GM mode. So in this mode, if we will activate it, mobs or players won't be able to attack us. Then we have teleport options. We can teleport to a player, we can summon a player, we can teleport into specific coordinations, and we can go to location. This element is configurable in the login scene Atavism core game object Atavism settings. There you can define instance name and coordinates and name, so admin could more easily teleport to a specific and predefined locations. Then we have gain commands, and here we can get some experience. So for example, we have level 1 of our character, and for the next level we need few hundreds experience. So let's say we will give ourselves 1000 experience. And as you can see, we even received 2 levels in this case. Then we have give ourselves items. So if we click this, we can search for an item. Let's say sword. If you can see, some items have icons, some not. And if we'll open our backpack, our inventory, and we will give, let's say, this sort that doesn't have an icon, we need to define how many items we want to give, let's say 1, and this icon will be quickly updated by the server. So later on, if we will select this drop-down list again, as you can see, this icon will be populated in the admin panel as well. And the same way we can give ourselves any item that we want. Then we have get currency, and here, as you can see, by default we have gold, silver and bronze currencies, as well as diamonds, which is configured as a premium currency, and we can define which currency we want to give. So let's say gold, let's say 11, and now we have 11 gold on our character. Then we can gain skills. These skills are also predefined in the Atavism by default, so we can give our character any skill that we want. And the last element for the admin panel is mob spawner, and this is important element because as an admin you will spawn all NPCs and mobs in your maps. So let's say we have 2 NPCs here. By default in the Atavism demo server version we have 1 NPC, and here we have 3 buttons. We have markers, so if we will click it we will enable it, and as you can see, for each NPC and mob we have this cylinder. Then we have roam, and because these NPCs don't move, we can't see any roam indicator here, but as you can see in the distance we have mobs that have this roam radius defined, and as you can see, for example, this mob is roaming around his roam radius. So this cylinder, this blue cylinder, indicates where the mob will move. Within this area the mob will roam. Then we have aggro radius, and this aggro radius is visualized by these red spheres, and for any NPC we have this red sphere. So if you would enter this red sphere area for the aggro mob, mob would attack us. The same here, but because these mobs are friendly towards us, they won't attack us. And then we have 2 buttons. We can spawn new mob, or we can select a spawned mob. So by select we can select any cylinder of the spawned mobs, and we can modify any element that we could define during spawn. So in this case we have a mob template and few parameters, but I will describe them when we will spawn a new mob. So let's switch back, let's spawn new mob, and as you can see here our panel is basically blank, so we don't have any templates or alternative templates, and all values are set by default like that. So here we have 5 templates. We can define up to 5 templates, but we need to define at least 1. So let's say simply NPC. Let's just disable these gizmos to not interrupt for our camera view. So we have up to 5 templates. We need to define at least one to be able to spawn this this mob, because it's obvious we want to spawn at least one. And if we will define more than one, then Atavism will randomize these templates for us. Then we have the spawn time. And the spawn time in seconds is basically when we will kill a mob, or kill this particular mob or mob template rather. Then the spawn time defines how many seconds will last until this corpse will disappear after our mobs. Then we have respawn time, and this is also in seconds. So this defines, as the name describes, respawn of the mob after we will kill it, also in seconds. Then we have respawn time maximum. So this is the value between minimum and maximum. So we can Atavism will randomize. We can define some random value here to not respawn mob every X seconds, but instead, let's say between 40 to 60 seconds or something like that. Then we have start time and end time, and this is in hours. So if you would want to define that these mob templates would be spawned between, let's say, 5, as you can see, if we will delete it, we need to enter text. So let's say between 5 and 7. Then these defined templates would be used in game between these hours, and beyond we can define these alternative templates, also up to 5 templates, and beyond these hours these alternative templates would be spawned instead. But for this quick tutorial we won't use it, because we would have to wait a bit. So let's switch back to -1. And then we have roam radius. As I showed you before, we had this roam radius presented as these blue cylinders. So we can define if the mob or NPC could roam around this area. This is in meters. So we can define that this NPC will roam or not. In this case, we don't want this. Then we have patrol path. Patrol path is useful if you would want to define some spline where this mob or NPC would move. So we can define some patrolling path for mob or NPC that would move along this path. And to define it, we can click patrol path. Then we can create, let's name it patrol 01, let's say. Linger time is time between, it's like a wait time between moving to the next point. And travel reverse is basically what defines what the mob should do after it will reach the last point. So if we'll click this, if the mob will reach the last point, it will move back through all these points. And if we won't tick this checkbox, then the mob will travel from the last point of the path to the first point. Also, what it's worth to mention is that mobs are using navmesh pathfinding, so moving through or between these points, mobs will always use pathfinding. Of course, if we will provide this pathfinding on the server. So let's create a simple point, like here, maybe here, and here. So this will be a simple path. As you can see, we have points here. And then let's switch back. So as you can see, this patrol path that we created this patrol path name is populated here. We can clear it. And the next option is merchant table. This merchant table is useful when we want to define an NPC as a merchant that will sell some items and goods to our players. So in this case, in Atavism, we have a few merchant tables predefined. So we can click here and we can pick any of these. If you would want to sell some goods, like for example this merchant, if we will click it, it will open merchant goods with prices, and we can purchase or sell some items to this merchant. Then we have offers bank checkbox, and this means that NPC or mob will offer a bank, will open a bank for us. And in the Atavism demo we have such configuration as well. And here is the NPC that has this box icon above his head, and if we'll click it, we can open a bank option, and we can put something into the bank and store this for us. So if we'll open it again, the item will be there. So if we will click this checkbox, basically spawned mob or NPC will give us this option to open a bank. And then we have quests and dialogues options. So we can define NPC as a starting NPC for quests, and by clicking this item we can basically click and move these quests to the NPC. So this NPC will, for example, start these two quests, but it will end only, let's say, this second quest, and maybe also this quest. So to be able to configure not only one NPC as a quest giver and quest completion person, we can define this as a separate NPCs. Then we have dialogues, and in this dialogues section we also can assign a dialogue to an NPC. And here we have only one dialogue presented, but of course you can create as many as you want. So now let's move back to the first patrol path point, and let's click spawn. So this NPC doesn't have, as you can see, movement. It's jumping around, right? It's because on the client side, this NPC, to reduce overhead, his controller is partially disabled. So we can show how this would behave if we will switch this template to something else. So let's click back, let's select this spawn. And here we have all this spawn information that we defined before. So we have NPC, let's switch it to something else then. Let's switch it to, for example, Bomberbug. This Bomberbug is, in this case, friendly. And let's hit save. So this, as you can see, NPC was removed. And now Bomberbug is moving along the line. So now this mob is patrolling. And we have this exclamation mark, so we can click on it. And we can see that we have 2 quests for this mob, right? So we can start a quest and we can hand over this quest to this mob because we defined it like this. So that's all for this part. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Atavism YouTube channel and hit the notification bell to be alerted when new videos on Atavism are released. Have a great day and happy developing.